medicine. And we interviewed and had a conversation with Rolf Heine, who beautifully described the field of care and the role of resonance, and how in life everything is connected with everything, and how we influence one another. And the second episode was with Stefan Schmidt-Troschke, a physician, and he is very active on the field of integrative medicine, also in political and civil society engagements. And he focused on this central role of listening and being aware of really what's going on, and to learn to respect others. It was a beautiful conversation. And now I'm glad to welcome to the third episode, Alexander Schwedeler. He is very active on the field of coaching. But before that, he worked for 21 years as co-founders, for example, of Triodos Bank Germany and other organizations, foundations. So he was very active also as a leader in various situations in business life, not only in banking. And since that, he committed his life to this coaching profession in many, many challenging situations. He is worldwide asked. But recently, he wrote a remarkable book with the title Fully Human, being a fully human in the age of artificial intelligence. And I would like to accomplish this title and ask Alexander, how would you write your book today, where we are not only focusing on artificial intelligence, which is of course a very important theme of today, also socially, but in a time in which the gap between rich and poor is opening more and more, and in which we are endangered to extend the wars we have on earth instead of reduce them and engage fully for a culture of mutual understanding and peace. How do you see the content of your book in this framework of our theme, how to approach a culture of peace? Would this also be a helpful tool to reflect on this question, what can I as an individual or me as part of my business become co-active, promoting a culture of peace?
Yeah, thank you very much, Michaela, for inviting me and for allowing me to have this conversation here with you. Yeah, how would I title the book today? Probably I would give the title, it's a spontaneous answer now, but I would say how to get along better with each other. And that is really the core motive of my work. How can we get along better with each other? And as you mentioned, I had a very yeah, busy life as many people, of course, but I was traveling a lot. I was giving money to initiatives. So I've seen a lot of teams who received money from my bank where I worked with, the Triodos Bank. And I always looked not so much at the money and the finances. That was part of the profession I had to do, of course. But my interest always was in the people and how they work together. So I've always observed teams and people, how they work together. And I found out that those businesses or those initiatives who are successful, they have learned to deal with conflicts, and they have learned to confront each other in a good way and stay together when things get difficult. And those initiatives who failed and where we also lost money, then the people were not able to deal with conflicts. And what is a conflict? A conflict is always between two people. And when you are not able to deal with the conflict, there's also an element of that you are not able to deal with yourself. And over time, you mentioned 21 years in finance, yes, and I had another 6 years as a consultant and leadership trainer in many countries of the world. And then came the pandemic, and I had to adapt and to change, as we all had. And I came more and more to the conclusion from now on, I want to focus on supporting individuals who are really in difficult situations. Because I had many difficult situations myself during my life. And that was really a decision to focus on the individual and to focus on and to add to all this, let's say, sustainability development, where I was part of for many, many years, to add the human dimension to this sustainability, so that we not only look outside and say we must do this, we must do that, that must change, but also that we look more and more inside. And I notice that is not so easy for many people because of many reasons. We have so much to do and everything. And so to really start working with the inside of oneself is a challenge. And that is what I want to focus on.
Yeah, thank you. I would like to enlarge what you shared because, as you know, I'm a pediatrician, a medical doctor. And for me, it became very soon so obvious that the human being is a developing being and that we are not, how Darwinism is teaching us, like animals. So, a bit humorous, I would say, if we would be really animals, we would be perfect as they are. I do not know one cow which could become cowiger. I do not know one bird which can become birdiger, but I know no one single person which cannot become more truly human, which cannot humanize, which cannot develop further. And if we would remain how we are, it would be boring for us. So that became for me the biggest issue, how to encourage people that our incompetence, that our deficits are the huge chance to humanize. How do you experience this in your daily work? Because when you say, and therefore I ask this, you said, it is so difficult for the people to look inside. There is so much around them which leads attention to all sorts of things. But if we do not review or do not look towards our needs as an individual being, which is developing, has this need to develop, we neglect our humanity. How do you see that?
Yes, absolutely. And the question is what or where? The question for me is where is the individuality? Where is it? Also physiologically, because I have been busy a lot with trying to understand the physical body better. And I see in business, I see, yeah, how does it work? We go into a meeting, we exchange information, we have a project, we have details, we collect them and so on, we discuss, and then we go into action. And then we have another meeting and we go into action and we go another meeting. So it's between head and hand, yeah?
Mm-hmm.
And that I observed leads to burnout. And I had a burnout when I was 42. by exactly doing this, by going from action to action to action, and with my head always, and then with my body, of course. And then I noticed, okay, there's also a middle part. And then I started to study this. And there's this heart, and there's the role of the heart, and there's in the middle we have the feeling. So if we only use thinking and willing for action, thinking for reflection, willing for action, if we go, if we use this for too long a time, the middle part gets exhausted. And that is my observation why so many people are exhausted and maybe shortly or in the burnout already. And if you are too tired, when you are too tired, you don't sleep anymore so well, and it gets even more difficult to start working with yourself. So that is also part of the impulse of my book to say, okay, obviously we have this middle part, we have a heart, and the role of the heart is beautiful and has many, many aspects. And then I found this organization called HeartMath in the US, and they did like 30 years of research about the heart, and they developed this term of coherence between the heart and the head. And that is by focusing with your attention in the area of the heart, breathing a little slower, and then calling upon a empathic or appreciative feeling. So you call actively, consciously, a feeling into this area, a feeling of appreciation or gratitude, and then it is measurable with a biofeedback device that the whole system, the whole body, the whole physiology, and the soul is more in coherence and is in better shape. And then your decision making is better, your intuition is better, because you are better with yourself. And that is one way to approach this question of yeah, how can I find a beginning, a small beginning to start realizing, that is what it could mean to be fully human. And I have to start here, or I have to add the middle dimension into this too fast, always from thinking to action, thinking to action.
And when you do this in your coaching courses, how do you access this? Because people are coming out of their business, they have their problems in the team and in the business. And when you then start to speak about the heart, maybe they think first, I did not come to listen to you because I have a heart. I want to have a good recipe, how to become more successful in my business. How do you approach that? That they really understand that even her inner life relates to the way they have more or less success in their outer activities.
Yeah. No, it's of course a key question, and it depends a lot on my awareness, on my being careful and finding the right words to introduce this concept of the heart in the right moment. And but if you combine it with what you also just mentioned, business success depends on teams working well together. And if the team works well together, what is necessary for that is that I am more or less in peace with myself. And how do I reach that point that I am better, yeah, at peace in myself, that I am learning? And then we start about these techniques, like how can you become more present? How can you be more aware of the moment? How can you observe the others at the same time observing yourself? Many people cannot do this because they are always busy with their own ideas and the next step. And yeah, many discussions work like this, that people are only busy with the next word they want to bring in instead of listening and coming down and observing, okay, what is my own reaction? What do the others say? And then as a next step, I introduce this technique, which is what I just mentioned, these 3 steps. Go with your consciousness in the area of the heart. First step. Second step, breathe a little slower so that it is pleasant for you. And third, call upon an appreciative feeling. And when you have that feeling, when you live a little bit, like a minute or 2 in this area, then you can send out the feeling of appreciation or gratitude to yourself and then to others in the room. And then you can also use this technique to prepare difficult conversations. And you can send out the appreciation, the empathy in advance to a certain room and meeting, which will happen tomorrow or next week, to prepare that atmosphere. And then you can try it out and notice, aha, if I am different, if I enter the room in a different state of mind, state of heart, I would say, then everyone else is also different. And these are very practical things then. And then people, when they are open, they try it. And then we get into a further conversation about it. And yeah, it absolutely works. But it takes also time. In one case with a company and a leadership team of 4 and now 3, yeah, it took like 2 or 3 years now, where constant coming there, working with them, learning, me also learning. And now we can do, before we start the meeting, we do a little heart exercise and say, okay, let's for a moment get into ourselves, get more present, arrive at the table here, feel your feet, feel your body in the chair, and so be here now. And that is only a moment, and then the conversation is totally different.
But that is a sort of meditative exercise.
Yeah.
Even. What role is playing meditative techniques and also values, ideals? What is really, truly human?
Yeah.
How would you describe the need of meditation, and how does this relate to this ideal of fully human, true humanity?
Yeah, of course, meditation, when you say the word, is for many different, for many people has different meanings. And I use it like this and say meditation is the way to reflect, to be with yourself. So in this sentence, that be with yourself, or I am with myself, I always point to this thing. These are 2. I am with myself. And this can be a first approach to say, aha, this could be an anchor or a beginning to work with myself. That means I reflect about my own action. I reflect about my feelings. I reflect about, yeah, what others say and feel. And then there starts this inner conversation, I with myself. And if I go a step further, I could say, okay, something happened, I'm in a conflict here or there, or I reacted in a way which I afterwards regret. And then I can ask my other I, my higher self then, but this is already a term where many people say, oh, what is this? But I can ask my more mature self and say, how would I ideally have reacted? And how can I make this more practical for the next time? And for next time then to prepare, you could also say this is a way of meditation then, to imagine the situation in the future and imagine how your more mature self would like to react and do and behave in this certain situation. And then you can use your imagination and your heart again and prepare that. And when you enter the room and you have the next conversation, it will be easier and you feel like more prepared for it. And you also asked about values. Of course, that is a big issue also. The why, the reason why I am doing what I'm doing, or the reason why an organization is doing what he or she is doing, or the organization. So the question of the goals and purpose, and in many organizations, this has dried out and is not alive. And then you see that when there are conflicts, there's no orientation possibility, because the goals, the why, the purpose has dried out, is not clear.
Yeah, thank you. It seems to me that you have also a fully integrated view on the human being, including the meditative aspect, including the spiritual reality, without fixing it to a certain worldview or spiritual orientation, but to give people the possibility to open up towards this higher dimension. Maybe you can, because our conversation time is almost over, and before we ask our audience to give us maybe the one or other question for the last 15 minutes, I would love if you could share a bit, what do you offer via your website? How can one in contact with your work so that you can inspire also via the internet more people? Yeah, this is this beautiful situation we have through the internet, that we can multiply our individual engagement in daily life.
Yes, absolutely. And I have in my book, which you quoted, a chapter called "The I Appears in the Soul." And that is part of the human and spiritual dimension, which I try to describe in that book. And firstly, there's the human body, and we can say there's an upper part, a middle part, and a lower part. Then we can say we have the soul, and the soul is including like thinking, feeling, willing, and they correspond with these three bodily systems or parts. And then is the question, if you think about it and say, okay, thinking and feeling and willing, who is leading those? And that is where the term leadership for me comes in. And that is the I. And I simply take it also like language offers is it to us. We say I. And earlier I talked about I talk with myself. I have a conversation with myself. So always it's the I which uses thinking, feeling, willing, and the body to realize the own biography, to realize the impulse in this world, to learn and develop, as you said in your introductory statement, to further develop. And it's the I which is seeking these experiences. And thinking, feeling, willing, and the body are tools to do this in this world. And if you think that further and you use, a bit logic, you could say the I is not physical anymore. So whatever term you use, you could say it's spiritual, or you could say it is non-physical, and then of course you could use other terms like using anthroposophical terms, or you could use quantum physics and say, okay, this is what we here are. We are in the local dimension, and the I is in the non-local dimension. And then you think further, and you can find out, okay, the I has something to it which is very fast, which is at the same time here and there. And because I'm sure you have the same experience, when you speak in front of people and you are fully present, you can totally notice what the people listen and understand, and at the same time craft your own words. And that is a strange experience, because it is simultaneously almost. And I would say this is a first experience of a non-local or spiritual realm, which we can discover. And of course, in my coachings, we also come to that point mostly at least after several conversations, because this is the inner leader, which, and I define leadership like leadership is for me how I relate to you. That is leadership for me. And on my website, I publish, and also on YouTube, every week a podcast. And it's also on Apple and Spotify. And on my website, it's Alexander Schwedeler in one sentence.com. There are the podcasts, only the audio, and on YouTube it's a video. But I do it very simple, but every week I try to pick a theme, which you could say is a theme in the realm of peace, of how to get along better with each other, and small little parts of behavior, of situations, of. So yesterday I did one on how you cannot lead people, you can lead only yourself, but maybe you can lead consciousness. That's a term by Götz Werner, the founder of DM drugstores. And yeah, another small little element of leadership. And how can I support people who listen to that they take, this is interesting, a small little thing I can change, I can do better now. Yeah, that's what I do.
Thank you, Alexander. I think we will look now if there is something written to us in the chat to what we can relate. And if not, I have some other questions so that we can continue towards the end of our conversation. Thank you, Alexander, very much for your contributions.
You're welcome.
No questions in the chat, just positive reactions and support.
So there are right now not yet any questions. Alexander, then I would really like to hear, how do you see the role of war and battle and conflict in human development? Because nothing in this beautiful world, I think nature can teach this to us, nothing is without meaning. You know, in the ecological balance, everything is related to everything. We are organized to communicate and to live out of the same resources and contribute to our environment. And it's such a riddle that we as humans, because we are so developing and have our deficits, are making so much trouble and war. This must have also a meaning and a role. Can you share this a bit from your experience?
Of course, I also follow the current geopolitical events and the wars in the Ukraine and in Israel, the situation, and in other places. Of course, it is for me also very hard to understand that people 100% claim that the other side is wrong and I am right. And this for me is hard to take in, because I think it's a basic human attitude, a human behavior, that I respect the opinion and the situation of the other person, and that I then try to explain what is my need, and that we both together find a way to live together on this one earth. That is for me such a basic human attitude or behavior that I find it difficult that there are people around who say, okay, you are wrong and I'm right. Of course, I can understand on a certain level the arguments on the many sides. Maybe coming to your question, all this is a call upon us to wake up more to our humanity. And if we feel like that human rights are mistreated, that people and countries and impulses are not respected, if we feel that is not just or whatever, we can turn to ourselves and say, how can I become a better human being? And how can I, in the small world I live in with my family, with my friends, with my clients, be more careful and take more attention to this point of, do I really listen well? Do I respect your opinion? Am I clear in expressing my own needs? I remember in business when we did million deals in the millions, yeah, to give millions to like 2 or 3 or 4 million to a company, that in certain cases I was lucky to have a trustful relationship with the person who received the money. I openly communicated, this is my need for the contract. He or she openly communicated his or her needs, and we came to an agreement and said, okay, for me, this is enough. And he said, for me, this is also enough from the other side. And we came to an agreement. So it is possible. But I know it sounds easier always than it is in real life.
You are co-founder of this Purpose Foundation. And I think that is towards the future a very, very important initiative on the economic and business sector. Could you share a bit, where do you see the contribution towards a culture of peace and why you were co-founder of Purpose?
I just mentioned in this description between the two negotiating parties, the term, for me, it is enough. That was something I was dealing with in my mind for many, many years when I gave money to others, because normally you would give money with the expectation for a maximum return, at least in private equity, yeah? When you are participating in the ownership of another company. And that's what I did for many years. You go for maximum return. And this idea of maximum, I came to the conclusion, is not healthy, because it's not possible. Because we are only one world, we are one economy. And if I go for the maximum, you cannot at the same time reach the maximum. So there will be a limit. You could say there's a natural limit, but I came to the point of saying, what is a healthy return? And I analyzed financial returns for over a period of 100 years. And I came to the conclusion, a healthy return is something between 4, 6, 7, maximum 8%. If you go to 10% to 15%, it's not healthy, because you get this to the detriment of the others. So it's a zero-sum play. And with this term of an experience of, okay, what is enough? And can I not say consciously and say, when you give me this, I have enough, and the rest is for you. And this also led to the whole question of long-term ownership. Because private equity, where I worked in, is like of you invest and you grow and then you sell for a maximum profit. And these processes of ownership change, they are so time consuming that the business is not taken care of in 6 or 8 or 12 months. And then the business is going down because you are always negotiating and da da da. So this idea of long-term ownership lived in me very strongly. And then in that time which led to the foundation of the Purpose Stiftung in der Schweiz, in Switzerland, I met Armin Steuernagel and we discussed about this. And he brought in more ideas about this long-term ownership. And in German language, they call it now Verantwortungseigentum. And in English, that would be responsible ownership. Responsible in the sense of, this is a long-term mission and task to do two things: to protect the impulse of the business and to be able to finance it when it needs finance, because also that can be a problem. If you need finance and you don't get it, the impulse is in danger. And yeah, these elements brought me to supporting the foundation of the start of the Purpose Stiftung.
And how do you see this concept as a contribution for a culture of peace? Why is this peace supporting if you are not only looking for a maximum of win? Because listening to you, I started to imagine, that is the reason why the richer become more and more rich and the poorer are becoming more and more poor. It is just part of the system. And do you think that your purpose initiative of responsibility ownership or responsible ownership could reduce this gap? Do you think that would work?
Well, we are not talking on a big scale here, because the big economy is, of course, driven by very, very strong forces. But in a small way, absolutely yes, because you kind of do not allow anymore, and that is the impulse also of Verantwortungseigentum, to create a juridical form where it is prohibited and not possible anymore that the company will be sold. And of course, I know there are arguments to say, well, there might be situations where it is healthy to sell a company. I know, but in a more general term, and in the most cases, it is a protection from, you could say, from greed, because you commit that you keep with the impulse of this company which you are building up. And to say it maybe in harsh words and too simple, but if you sell a company, it's a bit like modern slavery. You sell it for a big price. The one who receives the money is the owner or some owners, a few people, and the other hundreds of thousands or many people who are working, they just change ownership. But maybe they have not chosen this new owner, but they are not able to decide about this. And if you have this responsible or this purpose idea of ownership, then you come to next steps and you say, aha, there's participation ownership of the employees. There is listening to their wishes also. There is a whole community we are building within the company and organization, but also with others outside. And we all build up something which is valuable, which is good for the environment, which is good for us and the world, but we are not going for maximum profit and then sell it to someone else and then it's gone. And that is not possible with the purpose idea. And of course, that how should I say, that prohibits owners to become rich. And in that sense, you diminish a little bit the gap of rich and poor.
Thank you. A last question, Alexander. In my professional field, I witness a constant increase of depressed young people. And also the suicide rate is going up and people lose hope. What would you say to young people in this situation? Do you have a message how you would encourage our new generation that our time is absolutely a wonderful time in spite of all the problems?
Yeah, I always look at it like this. If you read the news, you get depressed. If you read them passively. If you actively search for good initiatives and for interesting initiatives, you find so many people, millions and millions and millions worldwide, are fighting for the good in the world, more sustainability, for more environmentally friendly situations, for peace. But you have to look for it actively. And if I could work with young people, I would help them to see this. And I would also support them to feel themselves in a better way, get connected with themselves, to learn to love themselves. This is a term I use more and more. Love yourself, because then if you are well, you can also be good to others. If you are not well, this is more difficult. And so this would be an approach I would try if I would work with young people, which I don't do mostly. Sometimes I have a coachee, which is young, like let's say plus or minus 30, and looking for direction and for clarity. So in these conversations, I can help with, and I can say things like, okay, what you are just described as a problem with your mother or father, or does this or that, I can say, this is normal. It's just normal. We all have that. So don't think too much about it, but find a way for a next step to feel yourself, to be more present, and learn to enjoy life.
Yeah, and do you have also a message for elderly people who lose hope, where humanity is going, why today the world is so technical, so unhuman, so full of conflicts?
The message would be similar, but maybe more speaking to the responsibility which you have as a grown-up person. And there's just a recent book from another consultant, and the book is called Verantwortungsübernahme in German language. So the book has the name To Take Up Responsibility. And he describes the whole process, how this is going. So from denial, from feeling guilty, from feeling, okay, I am here how do you say, das Opfer, I am the one who suffers, so you are guilty, into, okay, maybe I can see the reason why it is necessary to do this, but I still don't like it, up to the higher step to saying, okay, I can see the reason, I understand why, and I do it out of freedom and with joy, even. And the book describes it in a very nice way. So I've done a few podcasts also about this, because I think this is such an important thing to realize. I see grown-up people, imagine being 60, 70 years old, who are not taking up and who are not realizing that they are the reason for their own misery. And to deal with that with a lot of love and empathy, and then try to find ways, okay, how can you see that everything which is going around you is a call upon yourself to take up yourself and try to go into a level of a higher consciousness, at least for moments, and then act out of that.
Yeah, thank you very much, Alexander. I think our time is now gone for this conversation, and I hope the one or other aspect we have exchanged in this conversation can be useful for our audience. Thank you very much, and also thank you, dear listeners, who have attended this conversation between Alexander Schwedeler and myself in the sequence of the ELIANT webinars. Thank you and goodbye.
Thank you very much, Michaela, for having me.